Hi guys, my name is Destiny Pittman and I'm going to be doing this week's presentation of the reading materials, which covered social perception. Okay, so how we view ourselves and others was the main theme of this week's readings. This began with learning about the social self and led to learning about perceptions. So Kason, Finn, and Marcus say that the social self deals with understanding how we know who we are, along with looking at our own actions, emotions, and motivations. It also looks at how we evaluate ourselves and protect ourselves from threats. It's important to learn about the self because how can we begin to understand others if we do not first understand us? Next, we read about social perceptions, which Kason says are the processes by which people come to understand one another. Understanding other people is a necessary part of life. Knowing someone's motives or intentions can help give us better insight as to why people behave in certain ways. There was a lot of good information in the readings that touched on these topics, but the three that stuck out most for me were social comparisons, self-esteem, and attribution theory. According to Corcoran, Crusius, and Musweiler, social comparison is a comparison between the self and others. When someone asks you, "Who are you?" how do you answer? Do you describe yourself by stating your occupation, such as a teacher, or do you describe your ethnicity, such as "I'm Chinese"? If you're like most people, you're not entirely sure how to answer the question. This is where the idea of social comparison comes in. Leon Festinger argued that when people are uncertain of their abilities or opinions, they evaluate themselves through comparisons with similar others. This means that people look to others that they feel are similar to them in some way, such as an age or athletic ability, to see how they compare. For example, if someone wanted to claim that they were smart, they would see how much information they knew compared with other people that are at the same college level, rather than with someone who is still in high school. People also use social comparison as a means to make them feel better about themselves. For instance, a person in college might compare the information that they know with that of a high schooler as a way to boost their confident self-view. Corcoran says that sometimes people do not see accurate feedback about themselves, but try to create and maintain a positive self-image. This is done by comparisons like that in my second example, called downward comparisons. Kason describes downward comparisons as a defensive tendency to compare ourselves with others who are worse off than we are. Whether it be the desire to know more about themselves or to lift up their mood, it is clear that through social comparison, having a strong sense of ourselves also involves others. The self not only considers who we are, but how we feel about who we are. Kason defines self-esteem as an effective component of the self, consisting of a person's positive and negative self-evaluations. This means that self-esteem is your opinion of yourself, whether it be positive or negative. There are two theories as to why we need self-esteem. The first is the sociometer theory, that says we need self-esteem to gauge that our behavior is acceptable to others. The second is called the terror management theory and claims that self-esteem is needed to protect us from the fear of dying. There are many things that can affect our self-esteem, but one study focused on the self-esteem of adolescents on a friend networking site. This is a study that was conducted by Valkenburg and colleagues. The study surveyed 881 adolescents that had an online profile on a Dutch friend networking site. The study found that positive feedback enhanced adolescents' self-esteem and negative feedback decreased their self-esteem. With technology constantly changing, it's interesting to think about how it impacts our self-views. Aside from who we are and how we feel about it, there is also the question of why do we and others behave the way that we do. The reasons that we come up with are called attributions. Fritz Heider was one of the first people to begin studying attributions. According to Heider, the theory that describes how people explain the causes of behavior is called attribution theory. Heider liked to group attributions into two categories. The first is personal attribution. This is when we attribute behavior to internal characteristics, such as your mood during the behavior. The second is called situational attribution. This is when we attribute behavior to external factors, such as the sounds around you. This early research of attributions wanted to focus on the cause and effect of behaviors. However, these concepts cannot be understood so simply. The folk conceptual theory of behavior explanation says that we must take into account multiple distinct modes, causes for unintentional behaviors and reasons, causal histories, and enabling factors for intentional behaviors. Although there is much research being conducted on why people behave in certain ways, it's clear that we still have a long way to go to fully understanding the causality of behavior. Whether we are aware of it or not, we are constantly comparing ourselves to others through social comparisons. These comparisons shape our judgments and actions. Our self-esteem also impacts our interactions with others. How we view ourselves can determine whether we behave selfishly or altruistically when associating with other people. How we attribute why we or others are behaving in a certain way gives insight to all of our past and future social exchanges. Being aware of all three of these aspects of social psychology helps us to better understand how people think, feel, and behave in social contexts. Here are my discussion board questions for you. The first is, the textbook says change someone's social surroundings and you can change that person's spontaneous self-description. When you describe yourself to others, do you only mention that you are a Christian when around other people that you know are religious? The second question is, as Christians, we often attribute good things happening in relation to God, such as, this is a blessing from God. However, it's less common for someone to do the same with something negative happening. For example, we don't as often hear people say things like, it's because of God that I lost my job. Why do you think we attribute more positive than negative things to God?